All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Wine, Women, and Words. I am Michelle. With me, of course, is Diana.
Hello.
And this evening, we are going to be discussing the book Black Candle Women. And we are going to be doing it, of course, with the author Diane Marie Brown. And thank you so much for coming to hang out with us tonight. We're very happy to have you here with us.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
So, for our listeners who may not yet be familiar with your book, can you give us an overview of what it's about?
Sure. So Black Candle Women tells the story of a multi-generational family of Black women whose lives are affected by a curse that kills anyone with whom they fall in love. So they've set up their lives to protect themselves from the curse, very isolated lives in their bungalow home in Southern California, but they have to face the curse head on when the teenager in the family brings home a love interest for the first time. So it forces them to grapple with their past. And we also go back in time through the family's matriarch to hear about the curse's origin that dates back to a voodoo sorceress in 1950s New Orleans. So we travel back in time a little bit along the way.
When I've recommended this book to other people, I've basically described it as having major practical magic vibes. From the first chapter, I was hooked, and I completely felt like that vibe of a more up-to-date practical magic. I don't know, were you a fan of those books or the movie at all by chance?
I actually have not read Practical Magic, even though I've had that comp. That's the comp that my editor uses quite a bit. And so after hearing that, I started it and I just haven't finished. But from just the first few chapters of Practical Magic that I've read, I was like, oh yes, I totally get it. And then I started getting worried, like, oh my gosh, like, I hope I'm not like just simply rewriting the story. But then I started to see, some of the differences. But yes, total Practical Magic vibe. And you're reminding me that I need to finish that story, or at least watch that. There is a movie as well,
yes.
right?
Yes, there is a movie. And to be quite honest, I liked the movie far more than I liked the book.
Okay.
And I definitely like this book. And this is not just me blowing smoke. I like this book better than the Practical Magic book.
Oh,
to be quite honest. And one of the things that I love about it is the family relationships and the dynamics of the sisters and the daughter and the mother in all of this. Or was it grandmother? I forget. If I might be mistaken.
We've all those things. We have a grandmother, great grandmother, sisters, the teenage daughter. We have all, between all of them, we have just about every kind of relationship between women that you can have in a family. So definitely something I wanted to explore and focus on in writing the book.
And I've been switching between reading and listening to the audiobook, and I just love the audiobook narrator. I think she did a phenomenal job reading the story and reading the characters. And whenever we get the chance, we always love to talk about audiobooks. And were you involved? Were you able to be involved in the selection process for the narrator and get to be a part of that as well?
Yes, it's an interesting process. So my team sent me a list of, I think it was like 5 or 6 audiobook narrators. And so I listened to some samples from each of them. And then I just prioritized who I liked. Bonnie Turpin, who is the one who ended up narrating the book, was my number one choice because I thought she could bring so much to it because I heard her read other books where she was doing different voices, can distinguish between characters very well. Usually pretty easy to distinguish between like male and female characters or older and younger characters, but I know that I have I have sisters, I have a grandmother and a great grandmother. And so wanting to have a voice that distinguishes between those, and I just liked her presence when I listened to her. And so I was thrilled when I found out that she was going to be the narrator. And I've heard people say, that they really like listening to the story. I haven't listened to it yet. I'm maybe in a few months. I'm just still not at that. I'm still kind of at that point where I don't want to read it, even though I'll read an excerpt for an event or something like that. But I'm just still too close. I have been so close for so long that I still want a little bit of distance. But one of these days I'll be ready and I'll listen to the narration.
My tip for that, because I listen to the audiobook narrations for my books, and what I recommend to authors is to listen to it when you're drafting the next book. Because what I find for me when I'm doing that, it's like I can listen to it and I can be like, oh, I really liked how I did it here. I really liked how I structured things here. And then I could keep that in mind when I'm working on the next book. And at the same time, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I don't like the way I did that. Yeah, let me fix that when I do the next book. So it's really easy to be able to look at the audiobooks when you're listening to it. Because I know a lot of authors who just won't listen to the audiobooks. Once they're done, they're done with the book. And I can understand that. I completely understand that. But I think in a way, using audiobooks as a tool for our writing is a good thing. But yet also we have a tendency to be so critical of ourselves that I think it also kind of separates that critical eye and use it towards a more useful tool.
Yeah, I like that. That's great advice. And I think that will be helpful, whenever I'm working on next to take a listen, and even just learning how putting together sentences or dialogue, and it comes across very differently on the page than it would somebody else reading it. And I think a lot of times we're not thinking about that as writers. And so I think that would be a good reminder to keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Also, just as a completely non-writer's workshop note, I think it's so funny how, I would always be, when I read stories out loud to my kids, I never do voices. I'm not a person that can do different voices.
Yeah.
And for me, it doesn't bother me that I'm not doing the voices, but when I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm like, oh, they're not doing voices. And that's something that I always listen for and love when an audiobook narrator does the different voices for the characters, because I think it just completely brings them more to life than the story already does.
Yeah, and it's a big skill. Even, when you have a character who, this is more an issue when it's first person point of view, but when a character is thinking and you can clearly tell when they're thinking and then speaking, just because of the little nuance of the way that a narrator will, verbalize what's on the page. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the things I was hoping to touch on was presentation of voodoo in the book, and I love the way you brought it forth, because I feel like it's been misunderstood in popular media. And in some ways, I kind of want to venture towards a realm of it's been used as a tool of prejudice in some ways. I actually got the opportunity when I was in New Orleans to speak with a voodoo priestess once, and to be able to study it. And I love the way that you were able to bring it on in the book. So I just want to get your thoughts on the religion and the way you presented it in the story.
Yes, I definitely wanted to handle the representation with care, because this is a belief system and a practice for people. And so I wanted to honor that, and definitely share a different perspective than how a lot of people understand or know voodoo, what it is, and its portrayal. As you mentioned, it's very misunderstood, oftentimes with a negative connotation, or it's stereotyped. And really what I wanted to show is the practice of voodoo as a spiritual act is really about helping and healing. That's what's at the heart of the practices and the belief system, and carrying on things from our ancestors and their wisdom and their skills. And so I wanted to have the women in this book really represent that very well. So much of what we know about voodoo as the religion, and then hoodoo which is intertwined, are the tricks and what people kind of think of as voodoo, but the tricks and the spells and the jinxes, that's hoodoo, and those can be intertwined. But voodoo is really about healing and helping people, seeking out injustice, giving a voice to people who may not feel that they have a voice.
And I think we have to talk about Willow for a second, because she's definitely, before our shows, we email back and forth questions and get our question list. And Diana, in her questions, she made a note that Willow was her favorite character. And Willow was definitely I love all of them, but Willow was just fun, so fun to read. And her personality was a lot of fun. And I just think we need to talk about Willow for a second.
Yes.
We need a Willow appreciation.
Yes, we do. We need a Willow appreciation moment.
Yes.
Because I just love her.
Oh, well, I love hearing that, because I had a lot of fun writing her. So again, thinking of voodoo and hoodoo, in this book, we have, I mentioned the matriarch, and she learned a lot from a voodoo sorceress when she was a teenager, a young woman in New Orleans. And so she really embodied both voodoo and hoodoo, and she tried to pass this on to her granddaughters, but they really separated these out, where we have one sister, Victoria, who is really very much connected to the spiritual side, the voodoo, and Willow, her temperament and her personality, she connected more to hoodoo. And I think that goes with their very different personalities, and speaks a lot to their temperaments and what they like, how they live their lives. So I had a lot of fun with Willow, because she got to do all the tricks and the hexes and the spells, and which I had a lot of fun researching and creating, things on my own. But in addition to that, I liked her. I like her personality a lot. I think she, sometimes people ask, are any of these characters remind you of yourself? And I think Willow is who I would like to behave like. I just, if I wasn't so like reserved or cautious. So that was kind of fun to embody maybe the personality that I maybe could be one day, or hope to be someday. So yeah.
And that first, the birthday dinner scene where Victoria, had to deal with her daughter bringing home a guy, and Willow was her niece bringing home a guy. I think that whole scene and how both sisters reacted really let the reader know right away, like, who these two women were, and where they were coming from for the same situation, that they both had the same senses, but they were approaching it from different sides.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm thrilled that came across, because that's what we wanted to do with that first scene, is just really put them both in a situation where they had to reflect on their past. Even we don't really know at that point what about this situation might be upsetting or unnerving, but the way that they react is really reflective of their beliefs and who they are and how they operate.
And I have to say, I do have a soft spot for Victoria. While I adore Willow as much as I do, I really feel for Victoria for what she has to go through as a mother and wanting to protect her daughter through all of this.
Right. I've heard from people that she can be a source of frustration because the extremes that she goes through to try to protect her daughter. But I think we as I'm a parent, and sometimes we do that. Sometimes we don't realize, that maybe our responses are inane or don't make sense for this situation, or us trying to protect our children, especially when they're getting to that age. I mean, her daughter is 17 when the book starts, and an age where she is becoming, making that transition from being a quote unquote child to a young woman. But I think at the heart of a lot of the ways that this family operates, it's really out of love for one another.
And I truly think and that's such a tough age, that 17, 18 years old, because you're trying to be this adult, but yet you still have these childlike tendencies. And I don't know about both of you, but I did not know what was going on. I was all kinds of nuts at that age. I was trouble. But at the same token, I love seeing Victoria's side of things, because we understand that it's hard being at that age, because we were at that age, but yet the parent, her having to go through that can be so hard as well.
Yeah. And I do think we forget as parents, what we struggled with and how tough it was for us. And, my daughter, she's almost out of that age now. She's 20, my youngest. But even when a few years ago, she'd always say, well, when she was going through something, you don't understand. Times are different now. But maybe, yes, I didn't have to deal with social media, but there are other kinds of pressures. There's always, something that as teenagers that you have to deal with, right? And so I also had fun kind of going back and being Nikki, the 17-year-old, but it was a little bit hard because I had to pull from my experiences being young in writing her, which, same thing. That was a tough time for me as well.
I think the one thing that one of the things that I'm not dreading, but nervous about for my daughter is 9 right now. Okay. And trying to convince her that I was that age once too. And I can relate. And I just remember, my mom saying to me, it's like I open my mouth and my mother comes out, and it's a very, very surreal experience.
Yes.
To say things that your mom said to you when you were growing up, and to actually fully understand it from her point of view. I understand her so much more now.
Yes.
Since I became a mom, I'm like, oh, I am sorry. I apologize for all of it.
Right.
Take it all back.
Yep.
And I definitely thought I knew what I was doing at 17, but I did not.
Yeah, same here. I was I went to college when I was 17. I had a late birthday and was going to college. I'm like, I'm gonna major in business. I'll be an entrepreneur. I'll be rich by the time I'm 23, and life will be great. Little did I know. But it's hard not to. Yeah, it's hard to tell a teenager some things, but we have to try, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was just going to say, this is your debut novel.
It is,
right?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It is.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it's my debut novel that's published, but it's not the first book that I've written. So I actually had I had a book, I had an agent many, many, many years ago that ended up going nowhere, and then wrote another book, and I wrote another book. So it's been a long road, but yes, this is my first book that I've had published.
And I think that's so fascinating. If you don't mind, I'd love to get into that, because so many writers, they think, okay, I've written a book, and that's a huge step to be able to write a book. And you wrote 3 before this one got published, if I counted correctly, as you know, math. But it's so easy for authors coming up now to just give up, to be like, oh, I'm not getting an agent, or my first agent isn't working out, and to give up. So I kind of want to let's delve into that a little bit and speak on that.
Yeah, I have given up quite a few times, just saying, well, maybe it's just not going to happen, or it's not in the cards, or I need more, I need to go back to school, even though I had already finished degree. So, but I just love writing. So as many times as I was over it, I just like to create stories. And so I couldn't let that go. And I had this particular book I had written many years ago and couldn't get an agent, got a few positive notes here and there, but nobody who wanted to sign me, revised it and went back, but still nothing. So I had put it away and had started working on something else. Graydon House had an open call. This was in 2020, following George Floyd being killed. And so you remember, organizations were trying to step up and find ways to reconcile things in some way, if that's really impossible, but trying to do something. And so Graydon House put out an open call for fiction by Black authors who were not agented. And so they said they made no promises of publication, but they said they would give feedback to anyone who met the criteria. And so I'm like, well, I have this book that's been sitting here. And so I sent my query, and a couple weeks later, one of the editors there reached out and said she wanted the full manuscript. And so I said, sure. So I'm like, can I have a week? Because I really didn't think that would happen, and not so quickly. So I did a little bit of a review and polish over that week, and didn't hear back for many months. I would go online and just to see, are they giving an update on, all the queries that they received. So they had received, I think, 800 submissions. And so they had been busy giving feedback. And so December of that year, I heard from her saying, hey, we're still considering this, just kind of hold tight. We'll know more after the new year. And so it was around March of 2021 that they reached out and they said that they would be interested in publishing the book, but they needed me to be agented, since they're under HarperCollins, one of the big 5. So they want authors to have an agent. So that they helped me find my agent, which was wonderful, because the agent that I connected with was closed to queries, and because of this relationship that she had with one of the editors, she said she would read my manuscript, and we signed, and then it's just been kind of crazy from there. We did revisions for about a year, and then I've been working on the marketing and the publicity and all up to it coming out this past February.
And I think we just need to talk about the cover for a second, because the cover is absolutely beautiful. It's one of the covers that should be framed somewhere. One day we keep saying, or I may not have actually said it out loud to you, Diana, but I say in my mind at least, that one day I would love to get a person from an art department in a publishing house on the show to discuss the process of creating the cover design for a story to completely represent what is happening on the inside of the book.
You
Because
said it to me.
Oh, I did? Okay, good.
Yeah, and you've said it on the show before. So we need to get a cover artist here to discuss it.
Yes, I mean, I was worried because I had heard horror stories. Maybe you've heard from other like debuts, but usually there's a Slack community each year of debut authors, and it's just a place to commiserate, share resources and anxieties, all kinds of information. And so in that group, I was hearing about terrible things happening with people's covers. And so I was not optimistic, but I did months before, they just asked me to maybe pull like keywords or images that might be good to be on the cover, share covers that I really liked. And then all of a sudden in my inbox, I have this beautiful cover designed by an artist named Bokiba. She's from the UK. And I was in love. It was wonderful. And so I was glad I didn't have one of those horror stories. There were just a few tweaks here and there that we made along the way. But yes, I very, very pleased with the cover process.
It's gorgeous. Such a gorgeous cover. I adore it.
Thank you.
Well, I know we're just about at our time. I'm just going over our questions. Was there anything that Diana, that you want to get done? My computer
I mean, there's
is
our survey.
Oh, of course, we forgot our
Yeah,
survey.
we gotta do our super scientific survey.
Yes. You go. You're good at it.
I go. Is it my turn? Okay. So Michelle and I have noticed over the years, because we're both writers, Michelle is she's very organized. Everything has its place. It's nice and neat. But when it comes to her writing, she's just like, okay, whatever the characters have in mind today is what I'm going to write. There's no plan, no rhyme or reason to her stories. Me, on the other hand, Michelle likes to say I'm the queen of chaos. I'm not sure if I can go that far, but I can be pretty close. However, on the other flip side of it, when it comes to my writing, I am very detail orientated. I have plans. I may stray from the plans, but there is a guide rail in place. So now our question to you, which is going to be two parts. Are you a planner, or are you like Michelle and a pantser?
I am, while I would love to be like you, Diana, I'm an absolute Michelle. I fly by the seat of my pants. It gets me in trouble. For my next book, I'm trying to be a planner, but it's so hard. But yes, that's what made the revision process very, very well. It made everything very difficult in trying to fit everything together, but it's kind of fun too, though. I don't know. I find it kind of a fun challenge, I guess. I don't know. I like not knowing what's going to happen and then just seeing where things go.
And then the other question is, are you an organized person, or are you pretty cool with chaos?
I'm good with chaos. I would like to be organized. I am, and even my organization is chaotic. So like, I'll have the same information or the same list. I'll have it in a Google Doc. I have a Trello board. I have it written down. I have in 4 different places. And so I try to be organized, but it's still chaotic. So.
Yeah, I have the bucket method when it comes to organizing things, like physical things, where it's like, okay, there's a bucket here for yarn, and this is where this stuff goes. Like, a place for that. I could just dump it in this thing, and I might have to root around in there, but it's there.
But it's in there.
It's in there. That's as organized as I can get.
Yes. That's not bad.
It's a system. It counts.
It's a system, yeah. As long as you don't look at my desk, it's a system.
Yes.
And I do love the freedom of sitting down and not knowing what characters are going to do. Like I plan and organize enough in my regular everyday life. I don't feel like I need to plan for my characters as well.
Yes.
Like they can handle it.
I don't understand it.
I'm just keeping a record of whatever they choose. I'm the scribe,
Yes.
maintaining a historical record of their activities.
Yeah. Maybe just for fun one day, you just write out of order, or, try something different. And maybe I will try to outline.
See, so I have a book that's currently on submission right now, and I had to do a rewrite of it because I did not properly plan it out. And so when I was doing that revision, I basically threw out the plan and tried to do the whole fly by the seat of your pants, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I was miserable. I'm not going to lie. I was miserable. Michelle was getting regular texts from me like, oh my God, I hate past Diana because of this. I've tried it. I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, you just got to do you, right? So, yeah.
Exactly. There's no one way to write a book is
Right.
what it all comes down to.
Yes.
I think we have talked to authors, so many authors through the years where there's the lineal way, and then there's authors who are just like, I'm just going to write in patches, and then, I'm just going to write whatever comes to me, and I'm going to be really, hyper focused on it. And so it's really interesting to hear how other people like to write. And I think this is what I think we like the most about this is that we get to find out how other people do their writing.
Yes, definitely interesting. Yeah.
This really is just like a writer's workshop for us. Like we just record it as an excuse to interview authors.
Yes.
But we really love picking people's brains. I think, I can't remember which author it was, but one author wrote everything completely out of order and then physically had like the sheets of paper afterwards and was put it in order at the end.
Oh my.
And,
yeah. That was a recent author as well. So.
That is impressive. That is a whole new level of pantsing that
Yes.
I have not attempted yet, but I fully respect it.
Yeah.
And that was a recent author as well.
It was.
And I'm like, which author was it?
Well, everyone, Black Candle Women is, of course, now out in the world. So if you would like to order your own copy, please be sure to check out our link to our bookshop on bookshop.org in our show notes. As always, bookshop.org does support our wonderful writers. Always stumble over that word. It supports the podcast, but most importantly, it supports all of the incredible indie bookstores out there. And Diane, thank you so much for making time for us and letting us pick your brain and talk about this incredible story that you've written.
Thank you. Thank you both. I really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your night.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.